I got excited, sorry.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Wow, that was pretty good timing. It's not quite 2:30. Yeah. We've been,
Just in case technology doesn't work.
we've been building your presentation up. Since we gotta start right at 2:30, are we on it? Is it that formal? Okay. So while you're getting that up, I can. Dennis, these are easements on,
Mark Cloverdale?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You good? Okay. Yeah, let's dive into it. I actually, when you talked a little bit about it at Finance Committee, I thought it was interesting to learn, so been looking forward to it.
Okay. I think a while back when we were doing the budget, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, sorry. When we were preparing the budget for 24-25, this is one of the funds that we have. And so when I did that, went over the budget. I was asked to present a little bit more background on this. And so it came in really handy because our Finance Committee is also trying to create a knowledge base of information about different revenues and practices. And so we use this as our first knowledge base item that we're putting in that database. So this presentation is about the Rural Economic Development Funds. They use that terminology. You also sometimes see the terminology rural public facilities. And this is all governed by RCW 82.14370, sales and use tax for public facilities in rural counties. Cowlitz County is classified as a rural county. They have their parameters of how they do that, but we are classified as a rural county. And so any rural county may impose a credit to the sales tax of up to 0.09% against the sales tax. And the state actually collects the funds from the 6.5% sales tax. So this doesn't result in any tax increase to the consumers of our community or of our state. As I said, we're a rural county. This tax is collected and will sunset actually in 2054, as opposed to previously set date of 2034. So they extended it in one of the legislative sessions recently. The tax doesn't require voter approval. The revenues must be used to finance public facilities and primarily serving economic development purposes within the rural county. And also it can be used to finance personnel in economic development offices. So one of the things that when doing this research, we noted is that we will have to take action to amend our county code 3.21 because our county code has the original sunset dates. It also has references to some of the legislative actions, and those have changed, so we'll have to update those references. So that's something we'll take on and accomplish. There's some key definitions.
Just a second.
yes.
This is one of those curious things where rather than put the authority in the county to decide how they want to tax their own people, it's a way that they can tax them for you and force you to spend the money the way they want you to spend the money. I just had to highlight that.
Yeah.
Yes. But
So
at the county level,
history,
you-
the
at the
history,
county level, you get to make those decisions of what projects are funded.
so the history of this is a little bit different. The state has, for as long as I can remember, had a 6.5% sales tax. And this program was an effort coordinated by counties to carve some of that out.
Come back.
So, it is interesting. On the one hand, what you said is true. They're making all these decisions for us. But it's giving us more discretion to spend them on things that are important to Cowlitz County, as opposed to everything being determined out of Olympia. Just a different way of looking at it. Still, decisions are making in Olympia that we don't have any control over.
Yeah, I would couch it as if they're going to make exceptions for counties defined by some element, then they could easily have just said in counties and rural counties, we will only collect 6.3% sales tax or 6.41, and then just let the county decide if they want to tax the extra or not.
So the rationale and the whole argument why the state would even be interested in doing that was the statistics that the rural counties, by and large, didn't have healthy economies. So to say tax them yourself, where the government were doing a favor for you is what they were thinking as they were saying, yeah, if you've got a struggling economy, it doesn't make much sense to expect you to raise taxes to accomplish public service or public facilities improvements. You know, potato. I mean,
Did they
the
really
impact is-
think that made sense? Because this doesn't take money out of Snohomish and bring it to Cowlitz. Right, because it's 6.5, our base is 6.5% of what we sell in the county, right?
I don't know if it's locked into what we pay in the county. I don't know.
There may be even
When they
more
talk about,
trickiness.
when they talk about rural counties, that usually is code for, they disperse it. I don't know for sure,
Got
but
it.
the other way is they can disperse it on a population basis, and which means there could very well be a subsidy. But again, I don't know if it's dispersed like that or if it is a function of the sales tax we collect.
I sort of apologize for this, but at the same time, I think it's really important for citizens to see the magnitude and complexity of games played to finesse something which probably has an opposite effect than intended.
I'm looking in the actual code to see if I can find, I don't know. I'll have to, once I find it, I'll get it back. I'll answer that question for y'all at a later time. How it's calculated. I do know that we expect to collect on this based upon historic numbers this year in 2024, about $2.9 million.
2.9 million.
2.9 million,
It's what we expect to collect this year.
yes. To receive in that. So
That seems high to me. What am I missing? I thought the 0.1% was around 2.2 million.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be close to 2.9.
Okay.
The good news is that their definition of public facilities is very broad. And it can cover anything from bridges, roads, domestic, industrial, water facilities, sewer, earth stabilization, storm sewer, railroads, electrical facilities, natural gas facilities, research, testing, training related to incubation facilities, in an innovation partnership zones, buildings, structures, telecommunication, transportation infrastructure, commercial infrastructure, port facilities. It says port facilities in the state of Washington, or afford workforce housing infrastructure or facilities. So it's very broad in the areas that facilities.
Question, when you say port facilities in the state of Washington, that leaves the question, we can use these funds outside the state of Washington?
No, you can't. It
Okay.
has to be a port facility in the state of Washington.
Or a commercial or a telecommunications infrastructure in the state of Washington.
Mhm. So economic development purposes means those purposes which facilitate the creation or retention of businesses and jobs in the county. And again, so you see where it comes back to your own county, including affordable workforce housing, infrastructure, or facilities. So the intent is that it's for our county economic development and any one of those types of public facilities. When they talk about economic development office, it means an office of a county, port districts, or an associate development organization. And of course, it falls under an RCW, which promotes economic development purposes within the county. And the one that we are providing funding for, or traditionally have provided funding for, is the Economic Development Council. There's some reporting requirements that come with this. So on an annual basis, we have to do reporting, and they have this item included that says public facilities authorized by this tax must be listed in the officially adopted county overall economic development plan. And if none exist, then the public facility must be listed in the county's capital facilities plan or the capital facilities plan of a city or town located within the county. We have used the plans, for example, of the airport, the ports, things like that, as far as notating what plan it's in. Additionally, we must consult with cities, towns, and port districts located within the county and the associate development organizations serving the county to ensure that the expenditures of money collected under this section meets the goals of economic development. And I think we accomplished this by, in the past, when you've allocated the funds, you put out a solicitation, you put it in the paper, you have public meetings to discuss the proposals. So,
I,
and I'm sure,
I'm not sure I understand. So suppose someone came up with a plan that said for $2.9 million, the city of Longview can do something such that it returns 3.5 million and more subsequent years. We're not saying Kalama can decide not to allow us to do that.
no, it's just saying that we should consult with the cities and towns and the port districts located in our county. And I believe we afford that opportunity through our public hearings.
Is it intended to be more us relaying to them the type of projects that would fit this?
That's just stuff that's
It's-
hard to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is put in here just to basically make sure that you are allowing public comment, you're allowing the opportunity for others to comment on the projects.
So one of the interesting things is, we have some regular applicants who are very much aware of what they can and cannot use it for. David
Mhm.
Morse knows the law, knows the statute very well from Castle Rock. And I
Yeah.
think Adam Smee is pretty familiar. And I would say the cities as well as the Port of Longview, except there's been some turnover in personnel, and it's been a while since we've had one of those hearings because we spent ahead. So it's a, a public hearing with an explanation of what it's for would probably be appropriate. If we want to do that, or we can just spend it on projects we feel are important. I mean, we can do that, so.
And I think the last time that these projects were awarded, you awarded more than 1 year. You awarded projects that required 2 years worth of funding. And so at that time, I don't think there was any solicitation for projects last year in late 2023.
I think the only one we did last year was $50,000 for the CEDC.
Yeah.
And that's been our standard annual contribution to their staffing.
And most of the agreements that I've seen that we have currently are for 2 years, including the CEDC.
I thought it was more than 50.
Is it 50?
It's 50.
50, yeah.
For CEDC, we
Yes.
pay
CEDC.
50.
We
Now,
get-
there are dues
and
that we
under
pay,
this,
but,
under this fund, it's 50,000.
Oh, out of this fund, but in
This-
general, we pay out of other funds.
I know we
thought-
pay membership, and that's a
Yeah.
different category.
That's a
That-
different,
That may be about 20,000 or so.
that's in non-departmental.
That's-
It's
That's
different.
closer to what I think. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think. No offense to the people who have to do the proper accounting.
Yeah,
But I look at the bottom line and I don't care we're spending this much at CEDC.
On this one, remember, it can only be spent on personnel. It cannot be spent on any operating cost. So it's 50,000. And I think it even says it's supporting part of a person, part of a position.
I'm having a hard time computing personnel is not operating cost.
I believe they are, but according to this, it can only be
They have
personnel.
their own accounting rules.
So you can't pay rent, utilities.
Yeah, we
those
cannot,
kinds of
we
things.
cannot fund rent, other operating, office supplies, things like that. The auditor's office, the state auditor, has a supplemental schedule that they require. It's called Schedule 20, and it's prepared annually for every fiscal year. And the schedule identifies in detail each new as well as continuing project if they haven't been completed yet. The economic development purpose, the affordable, if there's affordable workforce housing infrastructure facilities project, staff positions, things of that nature. And the schedule also needs to include the amount of tax proceeds that were allocated to the project, including the number of businesses created or retained by each project, and the estimated number of jobs created or retained by the project. Well, one of the things I noted is that our agreements do not have that last bit of information that we need about the number of businesses created or retained or the jobs. And so I'm recommending that all future agreements include a section where or their application telling us this pertinent information so that we can appropriately report it to the state auditor.
In the past, the problem I've had with some of these is people come out with these outrageous, to meet the qualifications, they put out these outrageous, because it was competitive, they put out these outrageous claims of, we're gonna create 50 permanent jobs. And we never follow up on that. And do I think we've ever gotten 50 permanent jobs? I'm using that as a contrived example. I doubt it. I doubt we've even come, maybe we're 10% close, maybe.
Most of the projects that you've funded are projects that are infrastructure, so it's created jobs and the construction of that facility or such, and those are pretty easy to compute.
There are permanent jobs and then there are construction jobs.
Yeah, it doesn't,
The construction jobs are easy, but I was under the impression this was for permanent jobs.
I think the documentation usually has been including both of those.
Right.
It shows
both.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some of those estimates on permanent jobs are, you don't know until after the project's done, right? And then you don't have to report it anymore.
right.
So-
Once the
so
project's done. you
Well,
don't have to
also,
worry
you
about
don't, there's a time involved, like a lot of what we funded up in Castle Rock area is really blue sky promissory notes. I know it'll come true 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But is there something that competes against somebody else who says, I have it here tomorrow? And I just wish things were a little more truthful, I guess. I'm not sure what mumbled.
I mean, on your agreements, if you wanted to add some additional reporting requirements, you could. It's not required.
I think a follow-up is always a good thing. All the projects should have a PM on it.
So then I have a slide here that tells you, I thought you might be interested in knowing the history. I have records that go back to about 1998, something like that. And so the history, including the awards that we'll be doing this year, cumulative, we've awarded $35 million of these funds. Portion of that were in bonds, 9 million, and the rest were in actual cash awards of over 25 million. So the commitments that we have in the books for this current year of agreements and commitments are 1.9 million. Port of Longview is 500,000. City of Castle Rock is $1 million. This is the last year of their two-year agreement. Same with Port of Longview. CEDC is the 50,000. And then we have debt payments of 396,000 for projects.
That last one, can you tell me a little bit more about the debt payment?
The debt payments, okay, hold on. So we had two, and one debt payment has been fully completed, and that was for the Port of Woodland. It was a rail improvement. The one that we still have is Port of Longview, and it's also Port of Longview Rail. And the original amounts of both of those issuances was $2 million of those bonds.
So that was money that those entities borrowed from somebody else at a price, and we.
It was monies that the county borrowed on behalf of those particular projects, as opposed to giving the money directly to those awardees. The county incurred debt towards those projects.
So entity A borrowed $2 million from the county?
No,
The county gave them the grants. We borrowed the money.
we borrowed the
by
money.
Bonding
to give.
against the regular tax payments, so.
Right.
Designating the taxes, the sales tax is going to pay off the bonds.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So at the time we gave it, we didn't have, evidently, we didn't have 2 million sitting in the pot. But
Right.
But we knew what was coming in, so we said, we'll borrow, we think it's good enough, we'll borrow from it and then pay it back out of the,
Correct.
what we expect to come in.
Correct. And I don't know how old those are. They're pretty, they're fairly old.
They're before
Yanine
Amazon.
Ponimayu.
What?
Yanine Ponimayu. Means I don't understand.
Those loans were made before I joined the commission, so it's
Yeah.
been quite a while.
The one that's retired was a 2015. But that was refinance. It was the 2015 was a refinance date. So it was older than that. And then this one, for the Port of Longview Rail was a 2012. And I can't recall if that one's a refinanced project, but so the county went out and received bond proceeds and awarded those bond proceeds to the entity to complete their project. And the county took on the debt to pay those bonds back.
The missing statement I'm looking for is, where is the principal?
This is the debt payment includes principal. This 396 is
Oh, that includes, oh, I read that
the
as,
whole debt service amount.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry, I read that as interest only.
No.
That helps, thank you.
So.
That would
when-
be a
we-
much bigger bond than $2 million.
Yeah. When do you expect this to be done?
This 2012A, it actually, I think it's complete in, I can't remember. It's 25, I think. It's not very
Oh, it's
long.
getting
It's
close.
almost, yeah, it's very close to being almost complete.
So can I infer from this, what we have committed for 2024 is 1.9.
Mhm.
You mentioned that we expect to receive 2.9.
Yeah, so I'm going to
Can
talk.
I infer that we have $1 million sitting there available?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that in a minute because you have a decision that you can make today.
Before you go, I'm
If
still
you would
struggling.
like,
So the original amount was 2 million.
yes.
And-
According to my work papers, I wasn't here then.
2 million, and we've paid back 396.
No,
That's a far cry from 2 million.
no, we've paid off more than that. That's just 1 year's worth of debt service. That's not the balance remaining on that financing.
This is 2024 debt service for that.
2024. Thank you. I should
It's
read
part of
that.
the outflows for just this year.
It's the glasses.
It is. So the top, I thought you might be interested in knowing, who all has been awarded. And these are cumulative amounts for different projects, not just one project. But your top 10, Port of Longview, 5.5 million, City of Longview, 5 million. Our own county, Cowlitz County, because we do qualify, because when you saw all the different projects, it includes roads, bridges, sanitation, sewers, as such. So the county itself has received 4.8 million. The city of Castle Rock, almost 4.8. Port of Woodland, a little over 4 million. Port of Kalama, 3.4 million. City of Kalama, 1.9. City of Kelso, 1.7, and City of Woodland, 1.4. And then we have the next highest after that is the airport for 563 almost $564,000. And then we have some other smaller ones that didn't make the top 10.
This is cumulative since roughly 99 or 98. something like
98,
that.
I think
Yeah.
it's 98. My records go back to. So the history of the awards also include some interest. We've issued loans. Sometimes we issue cash and sometimes we've given loans to awardees. Right now we have three loans outstanding. And so the interest that come off of those loans, we have used those funds for projects that don't strictly meet the requirements of the statute. So for example, I saw an example of some playground equipment that was utilized with the interest funds versus infrastructure, because really the statute requires it to be predominantly spent on infrastructure.
I think that Castle Rock boat launch also got some money somewhere that again
Yeah,
before, I think it was before I was on board.
And so there's been studies, like economic studies that have been funded with the interest income website, I think, for the Economic Development Council. So things like that have been funded from the interest earned on those loans. But as I said, we've only got 3 loans. One expires in 2024, will be paid off. Their interest rates are really low. They're rates of 1% all the way up to 3.5%. So there's really not a lot of interest income coming in. And it appears the notes in my documents say that the state auditor's office reviewed this practice and did not reject this practice as acceptable. So
the principal has to go back into the main purpose.
right, the
But
principal goes
interest
back
Collected, we have a little leeway
a
with.
little bit of discretion on. And
Oh.
so you have about $73,000 there. I don't expect to get a lot more than that because these loans are, like I said, one's paying off this year in I think June.
So
And
yesterday we heard about one of our parks with disrepair on the courts. This theoretically could work for something like that.
mhm.
I mean.
Yep.
I think Deborah wanted to chime in.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Hello,
Hi.
Deborah Gardner, Cowles County Treasurer. I pulled out the bond because I heard you guys talking about that. So in 2002, the original bond was taken out for $5,695,000. And that was for all those different projects that Kathy was talking about, that the county borrowed money for, gave it to those agencies that applied for it. And then we were paying the bond payment from those proceeds of that tax. And we refinanced that debt in 2012, and that's the 2012A. And the last payment on that debt is April 1st of 2024. It'll be
Oh, so
paid
it's
off.
coming right up.
And I looked at the RCW on the other question, and the way that I understand it is that 0.09% that comes back from the state's portion is on an occurrence of any taxable event within the county.
So it's actually based on what's spent within our county.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 6.5% goes to the state, and then they give us back the 0.09 of county occurrences.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I may fill in history here that I think you might enjoy. At least my view on projects was that if there was a project such that the entity who would want the grant could actually monetize that, then I would typically want that to be, to have interest rate on it. I typically would like that to be a loan. And, because there are some projects where you're not going to be able to monetize it, but everybody sort of agrees it's good to have a park where somebody can, okay, so
Right.
that's an outside grant. But if you're putting in a new sewer system, you're going to charge the users.
And I think the interest rate when those loans were taken out, usually the rates tied to whatever the state pool rate was at the time.
If we were to give some entity a loan now out of this fund, what kind of interest rate would we charge?
Well, if we followed past practice, we would tie it to the state pool interest rate, the amount that. I don't know now that we have our own pool, if we would tie it to our investment pool rate or the state investment pool rate.
Yeah, can you give us the numbers for those two approximately?
I think the state pool right now is like 5.4%. And our pool, I think, was like 5.1.
Oh, so the state pool is ahead of us?
Yes.
Whoa.
That's because we have those longer term investments that will,
Got it.
ladder out longer, and the state pool is, rising more quicker than the longer term investments. So
Yeah,
They can also fall
Oh,
quicker
yeah.
when it goes the
Yeah.
other way.
exactly.
They're gonna fall a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to your point, sometimes it would make sense to loan it out because you're actually receiving some
Right.
back that you can do other things with.
So the next slide that I have is about the interest that our cash holdings is producing, that we're actually earning off of this fund balance for the rural county public facilities. In 2023, well, first off, go another slide. So there is nothing in several RCWs that have to do with funds. They do dictate whether the invested funds have to go back for the same purpose. In this particular RCW, there is no statutory requirement to invest the sales tax proceeds. But we do through the treasurer's office. And so the funds invested by the treasurer's office could be for the benefit of the general fund, but that's not taken place to date because that hasn't been our practice. Our practice has been wherever the fund is, the interest that's earned goes back to that same fund. So in 2023, we earned 146,000. And prior to that, over the period of 3 years, we earned a total of 140,000. That's when the earnings rates were lower. So currently, there's only one indirect, what I call an indirect charge or an overhead charge, and that's the auditor's services that's charged to this fund. The assumption is that this revenue source is available to actually cover these charges because those charges don't meet the statutory requirement of the funds. But I want to bring up that we could consider expanding overhead charges to this fund. For example, we do a OAS personnel charge allocation, and it's based upon fund balance, and we do that for public works and for building and planning and a couple of other ones. But we've never charged this fund any overhead, and we could if we wanted to. So
For like
to reduce some of our
example,
general fund expenses.
for some of the work like you guys do.
Right, because we maintain the
If you
contracts.
maintain it and the time it costs for that,
Right.
we could bill that time roughly to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just suggesting that this is an area that we could recoup some of our general fund expenses. It's not a lot, but it's something to consider for maybe the next budget cycle.
I think that makes sense.
So
Not that much, so.
the idea behind that is in the general fund, we have more flexibility. And I'm always for improving our flexibility.
Yeah. If they're doing the work, if you can tie the work to a specific project,
Right.
then I don't usually have an issue with that because it kind of makes sense.
Okay, so I'm going to look to do that possibly for the next budget cycle. So the next slide is forecasting what we have available. And so when I look at our cash balances and our fund balance for this, I'm saying that we should maintain at least enough to cover our debt payment and some cash flow because the fund comes in every month. The revenues come in every month. They don't come in all at one time. And then even taking that into consideration, setting that aside as a reserved, we still have unreserved about $3.3 million right now that we're sitting on. So I'm showing that we're going to bring in about 2.9 this year. We have commitments of awards, Castle Rock, City of Longview, and Economic Development Council. And then we have our debt payment, but that still leaves us sitting on a little over 4 million of unreserved cash. And so if you wanted to entertain looking at any new projects, you have sufficient cash available to look at projects if you have the desire to do that. And the next slide kind of goes over the historical. When you do put these out, it looks like I went back a couple of years to, and it looks like in January, the board would make a decision to seek projects. Then my office would put out the proposals, would make those available, publicize, send letters of invitation to prospective applicants, and have those due in February, end of February, and then review those in March and come back to the commissioners with proposals and actually hold a public meeting to go over project proposals and the board make a decision or not. And then make an award in April to finish everything out.
So the question to us today is if we have a desire to put out an interest in entertaining proposals.
Mhm.
That's the question.
So one of the projects that we approved several years ago was a 3-year set of allocations to the event center to plan and build
Yes, you approved,
a mobile home park, an RV
you
park.
approved $900,000 and it was 300,000 annually. And the last payment was last year, 23.
In 23, okay, so
Mhm.
That was the last payment?
That was the last payment. So you've funded $900,000 for it.
Why
RV.
why don't I see an RV park there?
I can't answer that question.
I know. Thank you. That's why I'm puzzled.
she's been working with consultants and planners to develop how
And-
much.
From sitting in the meetings, I know like the water and some of the infrastructure has been put in. I don't know how expensive that is, but I would assume some of that's for that, where they just used to park in grass and they were self-contained. Now they actually,
Have hookups.
Right, but it was, we were going to give enough to get the thing done completely.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that some of that money has yet to be spent. It's, the
I can find out for you. I think it's correct that there was a lot of planning with some other activities that were going to go around and near and master planning that whole area. And so I think some of the plans may have gotten delayed because of that. So,
yeah, that part's understandable, and also the unfortunate cost increase from the delay, I'm sure, but um actually, do we have Kim on it at all?
Don't see her.
yeah.
They will be in next Wednesday. On a
That's a
different
good enough
subject, but
Yeah,
should be open.
Yeah.
to be
We
able-
might,
I'll-
we might
I'll
want
give
to
her a
ask
heads
him,
up.
we might want to ask him to just give us an update on the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
how much of the $900,000 is left.
I'll ask him to give an update on that.
okay, thank you.
And that's the end of my presentation.
So the answer from us is, should she send out and request projects?
I think so, wouldn't
Yeah.
you?
I can't
Mhm,
imagine
sure.
why we wouldn't.
Get back into it. We used to do it every year, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And looks like doesn't mean we'll spend all those funds, but we have
Yeah, you
funds.
don't,
if we
yeah, you
see
don't
some
have,
that-
you don't,
So,
and I wouldn't recommend you spend all of them.
So the revenue that's coming in is just the 0.09 monies?
Yes.
So the 1/10 monies that come in from behavioral tax will be a bit more than this then, obviously.
Yes, they're actually, you had your 2.3 million number that you quoted.
Yeah.
But it's coming in it was coming in at more like 3 million. So I can show you that too, but
Well, then that makes sense.
as long as you guarantee it continues that way.
no, no, that one's sunset. So
Uh,
this one's not sunset.
Yeah,
yeah,
We have a long
that's a
time.
good point. So in the past, when we run out, we've given some kind of constraints in terms of the dollar amounts and the terms of sorts. Do you have any suggestion?
No, I don't have any. I mean, you've given out as much as $1 million. That's some of the higher numbers I've seen for on an annual basis. Some are 500,000. I haven't seen any loans in quite a while in your books.
So
So
you-
we should
do you want,
decide,
do you want to see the piece before it goes out?
probably, shouldn't we?
You want to make it a loan, right?
Oh, it depends on what, on what the proposal is. So, yeah,
Yeah. And most of the proposals that I've seen in the files, the project is much greater than the amount they're seeking from the county. The project itself, maybe $3 million, but yet they're seeking funds from more than one source or one.
we've always been fond of matching
Matching,
funds. It's
yeah.
our way to figure out whether somebody else really, somebody's really interested in it.
So I'm kind of inferring here, Kathy, that we maybe want to see that document before it gets printed
Sure.
out.
Sure.
And in terms of the dollar amounts, based on the projection here, I would guess we want to put at least initially a mental cap of a total of 2.5 million. I'm just throwing a number out.
I'm okay, I kind of look at what are we generating per year, because I'm okay if we carry a little bit of extra balance, because you never know when the great project comes in that does a lot of things that you want a little extra for.
Yeah, exactly. And that would apply even today,
Yeah,
right? So if somebody says, I actually need 3 million to do this wonderful thing.
So we know that the bond issue is going to be paid off this year. Deborah explained to that. But the 3 other small loans, they're paid off or
Well, there's
or
one,
are those receipts are they included in the revenue?
They're included in, they're not included in that 2.9 that I gave you. So they're very small. That's why I didn't put those in there as additional revenues. One is paid off in June. That's for Port of Longview. We have a fire district, rural fire district number Callowitz 2 Fire and Rescue, and it's paid off in 2026. And then we have a very small one for City of Castle Rock, and it's paid off in 2028. But they're very small. They're small repayments. Like this one's 14,000 annually. This one's in 30,000 range, and this one is 22. The last payment's 22,000. Okay,
Any other questions on, we have audience. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them. Appreciate it. Thank you. And
Okay.
it sounds like every once in a while, you're gonna, through finance committee, you're gonna tackle different fund sources and kind of break them down like this. And I think that's
yes.
a good thing. So
And the
This
next,
is super.
the next one we're going to look at is going to be the tourism, the sales tax related to
tourism
lodging,
dollars. Yeah,
lodging and tourism.
good. Perfect. Any other questions?
It seems like we should have more questions, but you've done such a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay,
know, just, that's what we expect out of you.
Yeah. thanks for
Okay,
everything, and we
All
will
right.
adjourn.